All right, welcome everybody to the May Bytown Housing Committee meeting. I will call the meeting to order at 1:04. Start at the top. Any additions or changes to the agenda today? Seeing none. All right, hopping right into it. What was it? How many weeks ago now? 3 weeks ago, somewhere thereabouts. Wyndham Regional hosted a regional housing resource share with individuals from our valley and over from Rockingham and Brattleboro and the Newfane County area. So it was a decently attended event. Had our friends there from Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust and some other organizations talking about their incentive programs and their grant programs and things like that. There's good information to have. Found some more resources I think we can be sharing out of that as well. Gretchen and I spoke briefly about our initiatives to the group, and just kind of talked about the website and the direction those things are heading, which we're actually going to talk about today. Our potential ADU incentive program, and everything that we've been trying and will continue to do to bolster housing here for ourselves in the Valley. Gretchen or Sue, did you have anything you wanted to add, or did I cover it?
I think, that was really good. Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust had come to us because they know that we have more of the connections with the communities, and we're looking to get more information out there about their program. So part of it, as you said, was to share the information that they have, specifically the VIII program, what has recently received additional funding. That's for housing improvements and new apartments in, existing structures or, associated with them. And then we were looking to have towns, as Gretchen and Eric both did, share some of the things that they're doing, because actually you folks are a little bit ahead of some of our other smaller towns, and sort of taking, this effort on. And so I think I want to thank you for that, because that was really helpful for some of the other towns to hear what you were doing. And then we heard from, Londonderry, has a housing committee, and Rockingham, who has a number of efforts going on around housing. And we are hoping to generate some conversation between communities. And I think that happened.
Awesome. Very good. Thank you, Sue. Gretchen, did you have
Yeah.
anything you wanted to add, or we?
No, I mean, I think that was a really good synopsis. It was great that we were able to present what we're doing, and I had a couple follow-up calls from that as well, trying to model what we're doing. And so yeah, it was really great and well attended. So good job, Sue, for coordinating all that.
Very good. Any questions on that piece? Awesome. All right, moving right along. The housing website. So the housing website is updated. The new design is now live, deerfieldvalleyhousing.com, in its current iteration. Tuesday, rather, I had an hour plus phone call, work session with Todd Garris to kind of talk about vision, direction, and whatnot for the website. I think ultimately we will see a bit of a vision shift on what the website is, but I think that's a good thing. It's going to be a lot more directed towards providing people with resources on how to provide long-term rentals and things like that, as opposed to kind of just linking out to so many different pages. There will still be resources, obviously, that I think is important to continue to share those vital resources from the state, federal, local level, all of that. But I think there will be a lot more information and copywriting surrounding, being a responsible long-term property provider, properly vetting your tenants, and kind of helping to avoid a lot of the issues that tend to sour people on being long-term property providers and things like that. A section on how to be a good renter, as well as some So hopefully some stuff from the renter side as well. So you will see a change, I think, in the vision and direction of the website. But I think in the long run, it's going to be more beneficial to people than its current iteration. Okay. Any questions there? Concerns, comments? Awesome. Out of that, I do have a bit of homework for the group. And that'll should take about 2 minutes per person. I need each one of you to email me a question or 2 questions rather, that you would have as a long-term rental provider for our FAQ section. Or, a question, a comment, a concern that we could address in that FAQ on the website. Todd's got a pretty decent list started already. But if everybody can kick me a couple, that would be amazing. If you have time for more, that's even better. But 1 to 2 would be absolutely amazing and very helpful, because one of the sections on the website that we really would like to feature is kind of debunking myths and taking care of misinformation about the trials and tribulations of what it means to be a long-term rental property provider. Okay, so that would be very helpful. If we can do that, in the next week or 2, just to give Todd and myself some time to get that stuff together for the next meeting, that would be really awesome. Okay. Perfect. So we will move along to the funding of Bytown housing initiatives. So this comes up, right? Because we have a lot of plans and a lot of ideas, and most of the time we tend to hit a roadblock when it comes to the funding of some of these ideas or projects, right? When we look at other Bytown subcommittees, we have marketing. I mean, that's a situation where that committee and the marketing director go to the town once a year to request funding for the initiatives and the things that we're working on. I think Gretchen and I were on the same page of thinking, maybe it's time that we explore putting this in front of the select boards with a plan on how to set aside some money each year to help us kind of achieve some of our initiatives. Not necessarily, say the incentive programs, but at least to give ourselves a little bit of a budget to work with, so that when we do things like revamp our website, when we have opportunities to participate in things or classes that we can be offering and things like that, that we do have a little bit of flexibility in being able to provide those. And without some sort of budget, we don't have that. So I think, Gretchen, what we were talking about is coming to the group and discussing the idea of this with you all, about going to the select board, whether or not you think anybody else thinks there are other opportunities for us to receive funding. I know it was right before I hopped on to Bytown Housing. The group was able to secure, some funding from it was either Peoples or M&T. I'm not sure about the switch at that. I think it was Peoples.
It was
Yep.
Peoples.
They gave us $500 towards our initiatives, and we did things with that, like send out the developer letter. We saved those seats in Anna Marie's classes with that money, and we actually were able to launch the website and the hosting for the first couple of years with that money as well. So I think there is, as we're doing these things like revamping the website, it would be nice to be able to throw a few dollars at marketing for that, whether that be on socials or wherever that ends up, to let people know that it's there and actually drive people to the website, because it's great to have information and it's great to try to share those things. But without telling people about it, then it's a resource that's kind of underutilized, right? So what are people's thoughts on us approaching the select board, or do you have other ideas in terms of funding? I'll open it to the floor. Anyone?
So I was hoping that we would try to reach out and get some sponsorships before we do go to the select board, just to exhaust that piece. And I was thinking, bank, insurance company, maybe Mount Snow. I don't know if they would be willing. I don't know. Realtors, I don't know. But hopefully, some people have some ideas around that and some willingness to go out and speak for the group to get the funding. And I think that it's a one-on-one ask, verbally, and then we might have to write something up and we can do that. So.
Doesn't Brattleboro Savings and Loan have some kind of initiative or program that does grants, something that you have to, apply for, and then they give you the money for it?
Yes, all banks do. All banks have sponsorship funding budgets. And I think insurance companies do too, like Richard's Group.
Yeah. Maybe it's just worth going to, 4 or 5 banks and just fill out the grant application and see if we get money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know what their timing is. I know like Brattleboro Savings and Loan, they do it at a certain time and they do it for the year and then it's done. So you can't get into it. Cause I remember asking for money at one point for somewhere and they said, oh, our time period's over. You have to wait until this date and then that will be for next year. So we got on the bandwagon for the next year.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if it's changed or not.
I don't even know that that's a terrible thing, right? I mean, if even a little bit of a wait for some funding is better than no funding at all, right? At least then we can plan ahead to know, yeah, we'll be receiving this funding. We can allocate it towards this or something along those lines. I think that's not a terrible thing. And I think, the worst thing that happens is somebody says no, realistically. Like we present what it is, that we try to work on, the goals that we have as a committee, and kind of try to sell the group to them that, that this is an important conversation to be having. And, the funding is what's going to help us to get closer to those goals. On that note, I mean, are there any thoughts, like if we did go to the select boards, kind of what's an amount of money that we feel would help us in an impactful way? Here, Linda, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think that the select board would be the last place to go. This is not a select board problem. This is not a town taxpayer problem. This is a employer problem. The employers have the greatest need for the kinds of things that we're attempting to provide for them. So maybe it makes sense to and I don't know what you've done already, the background is how many employers, how many employees, how many, your employees, which of course points really well to Mount Snow, about the biggest employers in the valley kind of thing to help provide help to get them employees. Well, to me, the select board is the last place.
Well,
I mean,
Linda,
obviously
I think,
they need to know what you're doing. Obviously they
right.
need whatever. And so they in their infinite wisdom and charity side to contribute to it. That's fine. But that would not be the first source.
Well, I think the reason we had discussed going to the select boards, much like the marketing committee, is because housing does it directly affects our economy, right? And Dover and Wilmington are both in the unique position where we have the 1% funds earmarked for economic development initiatives. This isn't money that I would go to the select board and say, hey, raise Linda's taxes to pay for this. It's, can we allocate some of those 1% funds to this economic development initiative?
Yeah, no, I wasn't suggesting that it was as a part of a tax increase or anything like that. It wasn't. I assumed it was also the 1% thing. Just that I think the focus is that, if you want assistance, if you want help, even if it's only, bodies, to work or to reach out. It seems to me that the employers, the businesses are the first line to approach. We know that everybody's going to try poverty. We know that it is going to be extremely difficult. But sometimes, when you shine a light under a rock, some really wonderful things are found. Oh, I think, the temp should be able to go that direction first.
So I just thought of, like our two biggest employers for Wilmington is, like the Mover, which is a nonprofit, so we wouldn't go to them, but WW Building Supply, maybe Shaw's, Walgreens, they might also be willing to contribute. But is there anyone that's interested in approaching any of these ideas? I mean, I think that's what we're down to. So
I would be, Ms. Mark, I would be happy to speak to the Chamber of Commerce folks. There's a golf event. It's going to be in June. Around that time would be a good time to, I shouldn't use the term work people over, but have that conversation with them about the importance of this. And obviously I own the River Valley Market, and I would put some money up to backstop that conversation so that it doesn't look like I'm just passing the hat to those folks. But I think Linda's got a good point that you want to start there and make an effort and show that you try to raise some money, from businesses in both towns before you go to select board. And maybe you go to select board having raised some money and say, hey, we're not asking you to do all of it, but maybe we can get a match on the private monies that we've raised to try and address this issue out of that 1% fund. So it looks like there's, we're trying to help ourselves before we go and, ask for some portion of that taxpayer funded pot of money. But I think there's quite a few, just talking to people, and obviously, most of my time is in Jersey and not there, but the difficulties in hiring people for the last 3 years, 3.5 years, or really 4 now, going on 4 post-COVID, it's all about the housing. It's 100% the housing issue. And what I have to do during the periods of the ski season is I have to bring on some J1s, because we just can't get enough people locally who can work, and it's really hard. You'll have conversations with people about possibly making the trip over the mountain from Brattleboro or coming over from Bennington, but those conversations almost never pan out, right? If you're not in the area, nobody's going to make that drive at the time. So you got to figure out a way to get more people here, and housing is the gating issue. So I think I don't think it's a hard sell for most of the people on the chamber. There might be a few people are like, hey, yeah, I'm not interested, but that's okay. If you get a hit rate of 50%, you can raise a decent amount of money and go to the select board after and ask for a match.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark.
Yep.
Becky and then Linda.
Yeah.
Well, hold on, Becky first, and then
Becky's she's got yeah, there she goes.
So I'm just wondering if anyone has reached out to like the Vermont Housing Finance Agency, Vermont State Housing Authority, VHCB, which is the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, because they all have grants, most of them around some type of housing initiative. So I don't know if anyone has looked into that yet.
I don't think we had, just because we didn't have, for the most part, haven't had a specific initiative to try to search for grants for. It was more to have a pot of money that we could make decisions from, as those needs arose, right? So I think that was the initial idea. So no, I don't believe we have. If anybody, wanted, if there are grants out there, that kind of help with that type of thing, then absolutely we can look into that. It's just, I know some of those are kind of geared towards specific initiatives that we didn't necessarily have direction on, to go after that type of money.
So
Yeah,
if you
I
don't
think-
mind,
Oh,
I'll
Go
reach out
ahead.
to the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. I've dealt with them and received several grants from them in the past. But just see if they have any idea of where we can go. If they don't have a grant, a lot of times they'll direct me on where to go for it,
gotcha.
if that's okay.
Yeah, and just, I'm in that grant world and, I was just kind of looking for something that is, I'm looking for like a couple $1,000s. I'm not looking for $10,000 to $20,000.
Yeah.
And I think, with those larger grants, there's some grant management that has to be done, reporting and those kind of things that I was trying to alleviate this group from creating that. And that's why I came up with the sponsorship idea. And, writing a grant, most likely that would come down to Eric and myself because we're paid staff. And so I was just kind of looking for that low hanging fruit that we could like pluck some dollars from with not a lot of strings attached to it, that we would be able to use this money freely. And so if anybody's out there talking to somebody about this, most likely I'm kind of like speaking a little bit out of turn, Eric, so shut me off if you think I'm speaking a little bit out of bounds, but the town of Dover held those funds for People's Bank. And I think, like instead of splitting the money, between Wilmington and Dover, I think having it held in Dover probably, is the easiest and most convenient, having that one piece to, is that right, Eric, or?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Becky, thank you for the recommendation.
Mhm.
Linda, you had your hand up.
Yeah, you I think it was you that mentioned it before, and I don't want to see it forgotten in all of this. You did mention something about a matching funds thing. I think that would make great appeal for employers, to get in on that kind of a thing. They would be more enthusiastic about contributing if someone else is in there with them. They don't want to feel like I've been singled out, and it's too much for me, so I'd rather not. But if there's matching funds available and they can see that someone else is helping or contributing, so I think we should look a little bit more at that kind of a program and see what could be set up doing that.
Yep. I mean, the other part of this, right, is while we are the by-town and we work together, there's a bit of a difference in the way that the 1% is structured, right? So like Dover has, in our budget, we have a line item of this year, next is $100,000 to be used for implementation of the housing master plan. So in my mind, and again, that was part of the idea that we go to the select board to ask. And I love the idea of the matching funds. And I think that that would only help to ensure that we match those funds out of that pot. But to say, hey, we have this money earmarked for this purpose. For Dover anyway, the incentive program that we're going to talk about after this discussion, that would come out of that pot as well. So I think, whereas in Wilmington, Gretchen will go to them and say, hey, here's our plan and here's the money we're matching, and kind of go about it that way. So I don't think it's out of the question. And I definitely, Mark, Linda, everybody, I appreciate the recommendation to go in with matching funds, because I think that makes it an easier conversation to have with the select boards when it comes time. So. Awesome. If anybody has ideas, if you think of anything or come across anything, outside of this meeting, please don't hesitate to reach out to Gretchen and I. We're happy to look into pretty much anything. Or if you want to take the initiative yourself and need any information from us to do so, by all means, keep us in the loop on that as well. Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns there?
Yeah, I just, this is on the agenda here, the landlord support group. We are going to need some funding, I think, for that.
Yep.
So if anybody plans on reaching out, if they could just email Eric and I, so that we don't duplicate, that'd be great.
Yep. Perfect. Okay, moving right along. The next part of the conversation is the ADU incentive program that Gretchen presented to the group last month. I didn't receive any feedback from anybody. So I guess our question was, is everybody good with the iteration that was presented so that Gretchen and I can move forward with putting that in front of our boards? See some head nodding. Okay, Gretchen, I guess we're good. Okay. Next conversation, landlord support group. So Todd, Todd has still expressed interest in continuing to work to form the landlord support group and kind of go over, kind of how that fits together and how it's most useful to people and things like that. Gretchen, we were looking for the group to provide us with.
I think Todd wasn't able to make it today. I thought he was coming today.
I don't think he wasn't able. He said he was not likely not going.
Okay. So I think what we were looking at doing was gathering the landlords and doing a casual meetup at a location in Dover or Wilmington. I mean, we did throw out like Valley Craft Ales. And just because they have a big space there and we could like maybe take a portion of their dining area to hold, like the first meeting, having it super casual. And I mean, we cannot actually pay for beer, but we could probably pay for pizzas. So do some pizzas. People do their own beer, or I think they have wine there as well. And just sit around and just like talk about, like what are their challenges, and what they see going forward with this group. Is it, meet up a couple times a year? Is it, really having a real deep resource on our website about specific issues? Like Eric had suggested that we have these frequently asked questions, from landlords, and be able to provide them with that resource. Maybe is it a hotline that I'm having this issue with a tenant and I can't get them out, and does anybody have any other ideas about how to go about getting that tenant out? Or I don't know what other kinds of things landlords would need. But because if we come up with, okay, we're going to have a landlord group and we're going to meet every month on this day, and it might fall flat. And it feels like this group, it needs to come from those landlords of what they would like to see, and not from particularly this group or anyone else. I think that it needs to be fed from within. Any comments or ideas around that? And
I completely agree with you, Mark. Sorry, Cliff, I'll get you in 1 second. I completely agree with you. I think, much like with the marketing committee, I mean, we can talk about things and the way we feel about things all the time, but realistically, it's the people with the boots to the ground, who are going to be able to tell us what is best going to help them. I think that's why having Todd involved and kind of helping to guide, is really important, because he's the one, who's doing this on a day in, day out basis. So I think letting that group kind of decide what it wants to be, I think it's incredibly important for that group to remain a positive. You know, what we don't want to see is a group of landlords getting together however often or with message boards or whatever and turning it into, you know, a place to just complain and kind of be negative. And that's really not the idea here. It's about educating each other, you know, and uplifting each other to prove that it's not as daunting a task to operate a long-term rental as a lot of people make it out to be. So Gretchen, thank you for the input there. Cliff, you had a question, comment, concern? You're muted, Cliff.
You hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. So I had just two quick thoughts. Did you think about having an attorney join the landlord support group? So if you had a hotline and someone actually had, wanted some legal advice, if you could probably bring someone on, it might add some more value. And my second thought was, have you thought about maybe charging a small fee for joining the group or offering some free membership, if you sign up within so many months of some sort to show that there's some value in joining it?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the key, right? Is proving that there is value in being a part of the group. You know, maybe further down the road in order to fund initiatives, whether that be education opportunities or things like that. You know, there is an opportunity there to say, yeah, there's a fee to be involved, and then we can use those funds for whatever. But I think the task is on the beginning to make that, to prove that it's worth, you know, showing up and being a part of. You know, I guess there is some thought that if it costs money, then it must be worth it, right? But I think to start, you'd want to start with you know, proving to them that it's worth being in the room for those conversations. So awesome, thank you, Cliff. Appreciate the feedback.
How many long-term landlords are there in the Valley? I mean, I know of like 4 or 5, but
Yeah, I think we max out at 10, maybe 10.
And I was
But,
going to
you
say,
know, the
I would
other
say 10
thing
to
is,
15.
yeah, so the other piece of this is that I would like to also help, you know, like we're putting this ADU thing incentive out. So I not only want to help the people that have, you know, like multiple apartments, you know, or the people who have only 5 apartments, or the person who just has the one ADU, because they are not used to renting to somebody. So like, how do you get references, and you know, what are the questions that you can ask once you get a reference? And so I think it's really important that we, you know, get the wide range of landlords, the people that have one and the other people that have, you know, 15 or 20 units at a time. So, and I do think that we, you know, like, so when I was talking with Todd about this, we talked about an attorney coming in. You know, I kind of was saying to Todd that we should have like a mini, you know, presentation, like 15 minutes about one particular piece of being a landlord. And like I suggested, an attorney. So thank you, Cliff, for bringing that up. And but I do think that it might be a good idea to invite an attorney to this first gathering that we do. So, and Todd is kind of looking to do this first gathering in June, I believe, the beginning of June. So rather quickly.
Yep. Linda?
I'm, just to let you know, not that it matters, but I'm converting to year-round. So my year-round tenant is coming in July and staying for I don't know how long. I would have to tell you that being a year-round landlord is and always will be as scary as hell, because you can never guarantee that someone is not going to, at the very least, destroy your property, or at the very least not pay the rent. So it's the value of a landlord's group is to provide the backup, you know, the strength. You know, we're in the same boat. You know, We need to find out ways to counter all these negative feelings that are possible, and maybe encourage other people to change to long term. So, yeah, the landlord group is valuable.
Thank you, Linda. Appreciate that. Becky?
Maybe one thing that this group could do is provide a way to do background checks. So I know working at Shires Housing, we used to do one level of background check. Not much showed up. We stepped up to another level of background checking, and that's when we really were able to see what was on the background check. But maybe we could raise funds to help people do that background check.
Yeah, I mean, I think as part of the website and beyond, you know, into this landlord group that I was discussing with Todd the other day, as he was talking about some of the management software that he uses and the background checks that get taken care of. I mean, he said, I mean, obviously Todd's working on a much larger scale than many of our landlords are, just because of how many property he owns, right? But he's running everything through one system, and that's, you know, initial applications, background checks. He doesn't collect physical rent from any of his properties. Everything's done right through this management software. They're paying their first class security, they're paying their rent, I mean, everything happens right through this. So, you know, again, Todd's working on a much larger scale, but there are other options out there as well. So I think even presenting to our other property providers, you know, kind of what their options are in terms of dealing with that. I love the idea of us being able to pay, you know, to have that resource there for people to use. But again, that's going to come back to the funding and what we think we can get together. That in itself, I think, is an initiative that may be worthy of one of those larger grants, right? Like maybe we put something together on that if we think we can fit it into, you know, something like that. That's the type of initiative that we can go after one of those grants with, and it's not so wishy-washy to say, well, we just want money, right? So Becky, I do appreciate that idea.
Becky, can I ask you how much are those? You don't know? It's okay.
The one I
There's
discussed with Todd, I mean, you're looking at 300 and something a month, right? And that's, again, he's dealing with something like 30 properties or however many he has at the moment. But you know, in my other searching, you know, there were other organizations who offer even a high, you know, like the highest level of background checking and things like that was something, you know, a subscription was like $44 a month. And it would probably behoove us to speak to those companies to make sure that it would be eligible for, you know, multiple users and things like that. But you know, that's absolutely some research that we can do to figure out what that type of expense would be. Linda.
One of the best sources of information about prospective tenants is other landlords.
Yep.
And if you ever look at Airbnb, they do a wonderful job. You know, the landlords rate their guests. Those ratings go under the guests as who have been a member from X amount of time or something. And you can look at those reviews and see what's going on. No, it doesn't tell you everything. You know, year-round rentals require a hell of a lot more than what Airbnb is providing. But it's still, if you look to the landlords as the source of as a good source of information, that's one leg up.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Linda. I mean, there's definitely a fine line there when you start getting into like collusion and some other scary words, but I think just the idea that you know, that those types of conversations could at least be had, or again, as long as it's we want this group to remain a positive thing, right? And we don't want it to turn into a complaint session, because I don't think that there's the value in that is not there, right? It may be at least briefly relieving, but it doesn't really help the problem in the long run. So I think as long as the conversations stay positive and everybody's kind of working in that same direction, you know, a lot of the ideas that Todd had in terms of the information we provide on the website for property providers, I mean, that transfers really well into, you know, this landlord group, and that's learning from each other or outside sources how to really be the best landlord or property provider you can be, so that you help to avoid a lot of the issues that pop up further down the road with bad tenants, by doing proper background checks, by ensuring, employment and all those things. I mean, you help to avoid many of the issues I think that pop up, as you're doing those long-term rentals. So, were there any other thoughts or comments on the landlord group at this time? Mark just sent me the link to TransUnion's Smart Move, and Mark, that was actually the one that I was referring to that I looked at the other day. It seems like a pretty solid platform in terms of credit checks, and then they also had like some criminal stuff, and they use a platform that actually allows landlords to post almost like Airbnb, like Linda was saying, where landlords can leave kind of almost a review for that tenant, under that file, so that future landlords can kind of read that and see. So thank you for sharing that, and I'll try to send that link out to the group for people to kind of take a look at, just to see what it is that we're discussing here. Okay, Jessica.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I've been in and out. My office is slammed, but there's a landlord assistance right now. Did you guys talk about that grant that is available for people who destroy a building or don't pay their rent?
Yeah, we have it here. But that's information that we can be sharing both on the website and via this landlord support group. So if you don't mind kicking that link to either myself or Gretchen, and we can make sure that the information's out there. Okay. Thank you for the idea. All right. Anything else for now on the landlord support group? Awesome. We will keep you posted as we work through that with Todd. Okay. The last thing we had on the agenda for today, Gretchen was going to give us a brief update on how things are going with the Southeastern Vermont Housing Coalition.
Yeah, so some of this is a little old because like our next meeting is Monday, so it's usually like the following Monday, so it's like a month old. So sorry for the stale information a bit, but at our last meeting, the ACCD, the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, presented their new toolkit, Vermont Homes for All. And it was really great information. And this toolkit is really designed around that missing middle housing. And, trying to go out and get those, growing those small developers, and, cultivating the local support, and making, building, housing affordable. So I will definitely get this PowerPoint that was presented out to everyone. I'm sorry I didn't do that prior to, but I think that it's really good, super good information. And, a lot of this has to do with, and Brattleboro has been doing this quite a bit, is creating pre-approved housing development ideas. So like they take a parcel of land and say, you can put this, so many units on this particular property, and this is what the design of those buildings would look like. It's almost like a cookie cutter kind of thing, and picking them up and putting them in different, communities. And Brattleboro has been doing that pretty successfully. So they're going through the development review board with these, and so they're already approved. So it's making it easier on developers, that they don't have to come up with, a design, paying an architect to redesign everything, all the, like a new thing every time. So Sue, do you have more that you can add that makes a little bit more sense on that, or you?
Sure, and I just put the link to that website in the chat. But I agree, it's a really useful tool. And I went to the initial workshop. Jessica was there as well. And the toolkit is really focused on 1 to 4 units, but it could be applicable for others. And it is really good at laying out step by step what is needed, from like how to get started, how to build a team, design considerations, financing. There's sample pro formas in there that can, people can work with, and all that information's on the website, to think about, would this project work on this site, or, would I be able to actually make it happen? I think that it is really useful, and especially for small towns like this.
Yeah, thank you so
Mhm.
for jumping in there. And I'm trying to think of the other things. The legislative update, I think that's already changed. So I think that was really basically it. The fair housing webinar and requirement for landlords to take is new. And so people were being encouraged to make sure that they review that webinar again. And I think that's about it. What do you think, Sue?
Yeah. I think you got it.
Okay.
Awesome. Jessica, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention on 687, the legislation, 213 is the big river corridor one, but 687 is the big housing bill. We just got the wording changed, and they were gonna allow duplexes and conservation land without conditional review. Even though single family homes are conditional review, they had them as permitted use, but they're changing it. So I've been emailing them, and that's kind of a win for locals.
Thanks for sharing. Any questions for Gretchen or Sue on the Housing Coalition? Awesome. Good meeting. Don't forget your homework for me, please, in the next week or two. Get me a couple of questions you would have as a landlord. Okay, and I'll try to put that as a reminder. I'm going to try to get the video up this afternoon and get it out to you guys, but if not, it'll be first thing tomorrow morning. And in that, I'll put the link to a few of the things we talked about, as well as a reminder to get that back over to me. Okay. Our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, June 13th, 1 p.m. To 2 p.m. via Zoom. If you have anything you want to see on the agenda, please get it to me by the week before. Okay.
Dan,
right.
can you stay on a little bit, and Eric after?
Who's that, Dan?
Dan, yeah, and you, of course,
Yeah,
because
okay.
you're running. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you all for coming. We will see you in June.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, you might want to shut the recording off too.
Oh yeah, let's do that.